Hi there, my name is Wade Murray. Welcome to the Great Green North podcast, the podcast where we talk about everything about lawns with a Canadian twist. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Okay, so here we go, launching into the first episode of the Great Green North podcast. Welcome all. Now, just getting out there, this is the first episode of the podcast, so we're going to be trying to do our best here, working out some audio issues, but we should be good to go. So without further ado, hi all, welcome to the Great Green North podcast. My name is Wade Murray. I am the host of this podcast, and today is the first episode. We're going to be introducing the segments. This episode is going to be more of an introductory episode compared to a regular episode, and hopefully getting through everything here, explaining to you what's going on. So without further ado, let's get into what is the Great Green North podcast. So for those of you who are just tuning in now, my name is Wade Murray. I worked in the lawn industry for close to 3 years, and I am a lawn care enthusiast, and I started a YouTube channel close to about 2 years ago called Great Green North Lawn Care. And I am Canadian, and there's a lot of things in the American lawn care industry that people can't access in Canada because of different chemical bans or different things that we have that are not allowed in Canada. So I started my podcast based on the sole focus of reaching out to Canadians and helping them with their lawn care needs. However, it ended up just becoming more in general of just a YouTube channel that could help all with lawn care stuff. In 2 years, I've managed to gain almost 40,000 views, and I'm currently sitting at just over 500 subscribers. So the YouTube channel has been very successful, and in the winter is actually my off season for my work and in lawn care, obviously. So we're going to be focusing on building this podcast and hopefully getting out to you with your specific lawn tips. So first of all, this podcast for now is going to be weekly uploaded for the off season. I'm going to try my best. However, once we get into the busy season, it might change to a monthly thing. Not 100% sure how much I'm going to be able to keep this up once we get into the busy season, because I'm going to be talking about this later in the segment, successes and failures. However, there's been some issues with me keeping up on content in the busy season, so bear with me. Second of all, lawn tips. We want to talk a lot about lawn tips here on this podcast. This whole goal of this podcast is educating homeowners about how to have that green lawn on the block, the best lawn on the block, how to have like an MLB baseball field, golf course, whatever sports you watch that have grass, how to have that lawn so when all your neighbors walk by, they look at your lawn and know that you have the best lawn on the block. Finally, I'm also going to be talking to you about stories about what's going on in my lawn, what's going on with my internal struggles, because even though I am a lawn care enthusiast and I am decently experienced on this, not everything goes as planned, and we're going to be talking about that later in the segment Successes and Failures, which is going to be the main segment on this podcast. And every week I'm going to tell you about something that went well in the lawn and something that didn't particularly go well. And I'm going to be bringing up stories from the past, the present, and the future. Hopefully things that will go well, things that I've seen homeowners do that goes well, and things that I've seen homeowners do that doesn't go well. And this is hopefully going to help you guys either become more motivated or think about things in your lawn, because honestly, the biggest problem with people having a great lawn is it comes out of almost an aspect of fear. People don't know what they need to do, so they end up doing nothing at all. But I want to encourage people to go out and do whatever you need to do to have the best lawn on the block. There's no reason for you to do nothing at all. Doing nothing at all is chickening out. Now, I don't like when people chicken out. So we're here to get you off your bed and onto that lawn and getting your lawn working as best as possible. Hopefully as well, I'm going to hopefully get some interviews with some people in the lawn care community. I've reached out to a few people. Hopefully I can get them on here, and then we can talk about their successes and failures in lawn care, because that's really what I want this podcast to be focused on, is successes and failures. Because another thing is, a lot of people on the internet making content like to only show successes, but I want to make sure that people know that there is actually failures and things can go wrong and things do go wrong. And that hopefully will help give you more confidence that you can take your lawn care stuff, your lawn care journey into your own hands and not be scared that there will be failures. So that's the Great Green North podcast, guys. If that sounds like a great idea to you, please hit that subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're on. I believe at the moment I'm available on Spotify, Anchor, and iTunes. And at the same time, leave a comment down below and give us a rating. This will help us grow the podcast and spread the podcast farther. And if you're listening on YouTube on the channel, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and leave a like on the video. That will help us push this podcast farther. I really want to help reach out to as many people as possible with this podcast. So without further ado, I think it's time to head into our first segment of the day. This is going to be the initial segment of every single episode, and this is going to be the catch-up segment. So we're going to be catching up on things that happened from the previous week, or things that have happened since the last episode, telling you about what's going on the lawn and everything like that due to weather and all those other adverse effects that we don't really have much control over in lawn care. Because in lawn care, there really isn't much that we have control over. But what we do have control over, we can make great use of. So, first of all, let me catch you up in this episode on who I am. So as I said, my name is Wade Murray. I live in Southern Ontario, and I started Great Green North Lawn Care 2 years ago in a focus to educating Canadian homeowners, as we have low access to chems, we have low access to fertilizer, we have low access to a lot of the products that I saw my American counterparts constantly selling and promoting to people to use. And that leads to a lot of confusion, because if you tell somebody, go throw down blah 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 fertilizer, it'll be fine, people will run out to the store and they'll grab that fertilizer and they'll put it on their lawn and they'll call it a day. But when you tell people go grab blah 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 fertilizer and they can't find it in the store, that leads to more confusion, more thinking, and people who were already nervous or overwhelmed about doing what they were doing, at that point will chicken out. And that's not what we want. So my goal was to give a variety of products, the American and the Canadian products, to hopefully help those Canadian homeowners get their lawn up and running. Because the other thing about Canada is we don't have the chems, as I said, and a lot of people have just straight up given up. The chemical bans came in the late 90s, early 2000s. And especially here in Ontario, because we don't have a lot of agriculture here. There isn't, well, we do have agriculture, but it's not as widespread as provinces like Saskatchewan. The chemical bans here are pretty widespread. Pretty much, for my American listeners, all you can get is quinclorac or Roundup, and then anything natural. So when I worked for the lawn care company, we sprayed Fiesta everywhere. That was always sprayed was Fiesta, and Fiesta is pretty much the main weed killer used all across Southern Ontario now. And what Fiesta is it's nitrogen. It's a high level of concentrated liquid nitrogen that we would spray on the weeds of the plant, and it would actually turn them red, a reddish purpley color. And then after 3 or 4 treatments, I believe was the minimum treatment of Fiesta, it took almost an entire year to treat a weed-filled lawn with our weed control program to get rid of all the weeds, because the Fiesta wasn't super effective. And with those treatments, we were basically burning. So you know when you over-fertilize your lawn and you burn it, this is what we were doing, except we were burning it in a concentrated form on the weeds that we didn't want in the lawn. But Fiesta will not kill crabgrass, will not kill any quack grass, will not kill any grassy weeds in your lawn. It's only a broadleaf killer. So dandelions, clover, those type of things. Clover is a completely different story. We'll get into that when the clover season comes. But that's a completely different story. And So that was what we have access to in Canada. So a lot of people I know either hire a lawn care company to get them to spray Fiesta, or they just give up. They completely give up, because a lot of people used to do the old standby weed and feed products, and now that they can't do that, they see their lawn getting taken over by dandelions every year. And I know Ryan Knorr talks about dandelion farms and his neighbors' properties. We have quite literal, every town piece of property is a dandelion farm, the sea of yellow in May. It's absolutely insane, and there's no treatment involved, because a lot of Canadians have straight up given up. And that was disheartening to me, to see people just giving up, people who wanted to try, but they didn't even know where to start. So I can tell you that I can help you. And the biggest thing that I promote on my channel is focus on the lawn, not the weeds. So the weeds are what is holding you back. If you think the weeds is what's holding you back from having a great lawn, you got some other things coming for you, because the weeds is just something that comes in when your lawn is not healthy. If you have a healthy lawn, you will not have any problems with weeds. My lawn has been really healthy for maybe, I would say maybe 3 or 4 winters now, or 4 or 5 seasons, 3 or 4 winters. And I pretty much do not have a crabgrass problem at all. And my lawn used to be infested with crabgrass. I do not have a crabgrass problem at all. And if I do have crabgrass, there's maybe like 3 or 4 plants. I get it out before it reaches the 2 or 3 tiller phase, and it's gone. Sometimes I get out right away. And dandelions. In the last couple of years, I think I've maybe had 15 or 16 dandelions in my lawn. And that's it. And those are the big ones that people care about. Now, obviously, I have other problems, and I will not be the first to admit it. Next week, I'm going to be talking about my knotweed issue in my failure segment, and that was a big failure. I let that get way out of control, and that caused me to have to break out some weed killer to take care of. But I can take care of my lawn without having to spray any chems. Over the last 3 years, I've only sprayed chems twice. So you don't always need to break out the chems to take care of your lawn. And in Canadian lawn care, most of the time you don't. What you do is you focus on watering, fertilizer, overseeding, and strengthening that lawn to help push out the chems for you. So backstory about me. When I was, ever since I was a little kid, I always loved watching somebody mow the grass. I love the smell of fresh cut grass. Every time my dad went and cut the grass, I would go sit and watch him. And when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I cut the grass for the first time by myself, and then it quickly became a hobby that I did a lot. And then maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, there was one day where the grass was really wet and it was really overgrown and it needed to be cut. So I went online and I looked up, should I cut overgrown grass? We get these rain spells in May where it will rain for like weeks on end, and we all know what happens in the spring. Lawns grow like crazy, so it needed to be cut. But if I didn't cut it when it was long and wet and overgrown, it was going to continue to rain for the next couple days. So I looked up, what should I do? Like, should I cut the grass? I didn't really know much at that time. My dad always tried to have a best lawn, but other things, work life got in the way. So, their lawn was always pretty good, but it was never perfect. And when I looked up how to mow wet grass, I stumbled upon a lawn care nut video, Alan Hain. And then a couple videos later, continue watching lawn videos, and then next thing you know, I was subscribed and watching Alan Hain videos. And for years, that was all it was. I just watched Alan Hain videos, cut the grass, really liked it. Then a couple years starting in high school, I got really into it. I started actually like cutting the grass 2-3 times a week. I started fertilizing like crazy. I started focusing on the color and the texture and all those things. And then I worked for a landscaping company for a year. I cut grass, I sprayed chems, I fertilized, all that stuff. I also worked at a golf course one summer. And that was where I kind of got into some of the more nerdy stuff. Me and the superintendent at the golf course would have conversations about plant growth regulators and different types of things you're spraying on the greens and top dressing and all that stuff. And that was where I really learned like how shortcut turf works. And then I got into Ryan Norris stuff and Connor Ward stuff, and then it just kind of grew from there. I got into a lot of different lawn care people, and then was when I realized there was a hole for Canadian audiences. And that was when I started Great Green North. As I've said, 2 years later, 40,000 views, 500 subscribers, and keep going. I've uploaded close to 70 videos on Canadian lawn care, and with great success. So we're going to continue going with Great Green North. Great Green North's not done. I'm always going to keep making content there, and I'm hoping to put it up to 1,000 subscribers very soon. But that's my story. And I'm still working on my lawn. I started working on the lawn about 4 years ago. The front lawn has pretty much got to the point where all it needs is fertilizer and water, and it will be perfectly green all year round. And watering is definitely something that I've perfected, I think, or I'm getting close to perfection. Last couple of years I've gotten into the really nerdy stuff like evaporation, transpiration rates, and soil temperatures, and how much moisture is in the soil, and all that stuff. And that has really helped. And this is kind of the more complex topics that I'm hoping to explain to people on the podcast, because it really did make a difference. I didn't really understand what was happening when I was putting that sprinkler into the lawn, when I was putting that fertilizer in the lawn, when the lawn started growing. Why did it start growing? Why did it stop growing? All this stuff I didn't really understand until you kind of get into the more sciencey, clear explanations. And some people need that. Some people need the more in-depth explanations before things start making sense. So that's what we're going to be talking about on the podcast. So that's a bit about me. That's, I think, it for the catch-up segment. So without further ado, let's shoot in to the next segment. Okay, so welcome to the second segment of the show. I don't know what I'm calling this one yet, but we are going to be taking your question. This is going to be the question and answer segment. So the next 2 episodes, I'm going to be taking questions off YouTube that I've received over the last 2 years and answering them, because there are a good amount of questions on YouTube. I try to answer almost every comment I get on YouTube, and I normally do. And I also get comments through my website. So for those of you looking for more in-depth answers, I also do lawn coaching through my website, so you can pay through my Patreon, and I do lawn coaching individual one-on-one. But people do ask questions through my website throughout the year. It normally gets pretty busy in the spring and the fall, but people do ask questions throughout the year, so I'll try my best to answer all of those. And then eventually, if you go to my website, you can submit a question in the emails tab. It will kick back to me here on the podcast. My website is linked in the show notes down below. And then I will hopefully be able to answer your question here on the podcast, which should hopefully be really good, because as I said, I want to answer more people's questions. I try to answer as many questions as possible. So, because we don't have any questions yet today, and I'm not going to be focusing on questions till next week's episode, I figured today might as well talk about things, simple things people don't understand about lawns. So, I'm just going to go through my top 3 things that I see homeowners doing wrong about lawns. And one of them really drives me crazy. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay. So number 1, mowing habits. So I know a lot of people, and I understand life gets in the way, but I know a lot of people who are really feel that they want a great lawn. Every time, people come up to me, they see my lawn and they're like, oh my God, it looks like a golf course, looks awesome. But they're not willing, and this is the biggest thing about anything you do in life, not even lawn care, but lawn care attaches to it. You have to be able to put in the effort. So with lawn care, people come up to me and they go, oh, your lawn looks amazing. What do I need to do? What do I need to put on it? What's the one thing I need to do to help make my lawn better? And honestly, the thing I tell people most often is mowing. And people are surprised. People see mowing as like that thing they have to do. And they don't see it as something that they do to help make their lawn better. A lot of people around this area like to do what I call the lazy mow. And they cut their lawn about once every 2 weeks in the spring and about once a month in the summer. And they let their lawn grow till it's about 1.5 feet tall. They drop their lawnmower to the lowest setting possible, and they just mow off everything in their path. And that's what their lawn looks like. And a lot of times it's pretty weed infested, but when they shave it down real low, it doesn't look too bad. Everything's green, and then the piles of clippings in a day or two turn to brown mush, and then they start getting dead spots, and then the weeds start taking over, and it's just a vicious cycle, and it never ends well. So biggest thing that helped me take my lawn to the next level was fixing my mowing habits. Mowing is not something you can schedule. Mowing is not something that you can say, oh, I'm going to do it every Saturday. No. Mowing is tied to the weather, tied to the growth patterns of your grass. You need to be constantly checking your lawn just every day. You get home from work, you get out of your car, you go inside. Walk through your lawn and see how tall it is and see if you need to do a mow or not. I encourage my viewers to cut their lawn at 3.75 or 3.5 to 4 inches tall. And we'll get into this all later when we talk about stuff in the segment. However, talking about mowing, the biggest thing is cut high and cut frequently. Because I'm going to tell you something here. Grass is a plant. And if you remember back to what you learned in elementary school science, plants grow by converting the sun's energy into sugars. And the process is called photosynthesis. This is why trees are covered in green leaves. Those green leaves help trap the sunlight and convert it into photosynthesis. The same reason why your lawn is green or anything that grows is green. So let's talk about this for a second. If you have a tree that has 6 leaves on it, and you have a tree that has 300,000 leaves on it, which tree do you think is going to get more sugars from the sunlight? Obviously, the one with the 300,000 leaves on it. This is the same way that it is with your lawn. If you cut your lawn tall, there's more leaf surface for the sun to be able to capture. Therefore, there is more ability for your lawn to be able to reproduce and stay healthy, as it is capturing tons of sunlight, producing lots of sugars, staying healthy. The shorter you cut your grass, the less leaf surface it is, the more difficult it is for your grass to be able to catch energy. Now, I'm not talking about saying shortcut grass is bad. Shortcut grass looks really nice, and while working at the golf course, I got to attend to shortcut lawns, and shortcut lawns are a completely different ball game, and we're going to talk about that in an upcoming episode. We'll go all in about shortcut lawns, because I know there's a lot of people that like shortcut lawns. But for the beginners, don't focus on a shortcut fairway golf course lawn. It's not what's planted in your backyard. It's not what you have in your backyard. You have regular homeowner tall grass. Most of the time in our area, it's tall fescue and Kentucky bluegrass mix with a little bit of rye. This grass is meant to be cut at about 2.5 to 4 inches. This is the most optimal height for this grass. Cutting this grass any shorter than that is not what the grass is trained to do, and you're constantly going to be fighting the plant, because the plant is going to be trying to grow back to what it naturally wants to do. It's no different than taking a maple tree, cutting a maple tree that's normally 400, 500 feet tall to 6 feet off the ground, and then expecting it to stay like that. No, of course it's going to begin growing again, growing new limbs, trying to grow to its full height. This is the same thing with your grass. Your grass is always going to try to grow to how big it wants to be. So, mowing frequency. The more you mow, the better your lawn will grow. That's the simple rhyme everybody can attribute to grass growing. So the more you mow, the better your lawn can grow. So this means that you need to be mowing 2 to 3 times a week in the spring and 1 to 2 times a week in the summer. if you're irrigated, of course. 2 to 3 times a week in the spring is crucial, because when we get to successes and failures, my biggest failure this year was I wasn't able to keep up with their lawn in the spring, and everybody has this. There's always a period where they go away on vacation, life gets in the way, they can't keep up with their lawn, and the next thing you know, their lawn is an absolute jungle, and they're shredding, leaving clippings everywhere, and it's a disaster. At least for me, it feels like a disaster. So, the biggest thing, the more you mow, the better your lawn will grow. None of this scalping. You should never be cutting any more than 1/4 of the grass blade off at a time. So that means if you divide the grass blades into quarters, you should only be taking off the top quarter of the grass blade at a time. I know some people say the 1/3 rule. I keep it even higher to the 1/4 rule, because personally I feel that is the most important thing. So I like to emphasize it and stretch it a little bit, because I know people will stretch the 1/4 rule. So that is something you need to keep in mind. Mowing practices make the difference, and mowing high also in the summertime helps shade your root system. So we're going to be talking about this in an upcoming episode. I want to talk about soil. I got a lot of things to talk about, but I want to talk about soil erosion, and actually how getting rid of your lawn could actually have a more negative impact on the environment than you think. But lawns themselves, the soil below is where the roots are. The roots on your lawn are not the deepest roots compared to a tree. The roots on your lawn are normally probably anywhere from 6 inches, 2 inches to like 12, 18 inches, depending on how healthy your lawn is. This is where that root system in the summertime is what you need to keep moisture in, to keep your lawn from browning out. We all have that lawn that looks really good in the spring, and then it just solid browns out in the summer, and everybody thinks it's dead, but it's not dead. It's just gone into dormancy. There's not enough water in the soil, so the lawn has stopped growing, has browned out, so it can conserve energy so it doesn't die. Obviously, it will thin out, because not everything can survive the drought. No different than if humans themselves are rationing food. Not everybody can survive, but the lawn itself rations the food to the most important parts, and the younger, more newer parts obviously don't live through the hot time, but that's just the way it goes. But when you have a taller cut lawn, it helps actually shade the ground below, shade that root system, which keeps the ground more moist in the summer, which then keeps more water near the ground, which then keeps your grass growing. So that is why mowing frequently and mowing high are the two most important things to having a healthy lawn. Believe me, if you start mowing 2 times a week at 4 inches, there will be a night and day difference between your lawn within a month. Within a month, it will make a difference. I have done it now for 3 years, and I would say that's attributed to about 50% of the difference for my lawn before and after. Mowing high makes a huge difference. Even in the summertime, I can see my lawn does not burn out or brown out as hard and as quickly as the people around me. Now, obviously, my lawn's irrigated, but there are parts of it that aren't, and that I do let go. And when those areas go, they don't go as far as some of my neighbors, and they also come back fully and completely every year. So that is the biggest thing that I think homeowners overlook, is the mowing aspect of the lawn. Mowing is probably the most important thing that you do to your lawn every week. So if you're really trying to have a good lawn, focus on that mowing aspect. That will make a big, big difference. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about here that people don't understand with their lawn is irrigation. Now, I know a lot of people who don't want to water their lawn because they don't think, either they think it's too expensive, which I get it. We all have problems. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. But they either think it's too expensive, or they think that it's a waste of water, or they think that it's ineffective because it's too hot. Now, obviously, there are things that you can't keep up. Human irrigation will never compete with the irrigation from Mother Nature. However, every year, if you do not irrigate your lawn, summers here in southern Ontario are getting so hot that you will see significant damage to your lawn. And there is no possible way you will be able to repopulate with overseeding and have those seeds established enough for the following summer for them to be able to survive another hot summer. You will be caught in this vicious cycle where every year you'll be losing the same spots in your lawn and you will never get them back. And I'm not talking about irrigating to the point where your lawn is green and lush all summer. I do that myself, and it does work, but there are realistic compromises when it comes to irrigating. I live on 3/4 of an acre, and irrigating 3/4 of an acre is a hell of a lot of water. So I focus on irrigating the parts that I see, the front lawn and the stuff around the house, the most, so that part stays healthy. The parts farther away from the house, I focus on irrigating to keep them green. Now, some people focus on irrigating to keep things alive, and there's things that you can do as well, aka putting on a small dose of water every week in a drought period that will help keep those new grass alive for next summer. So think about this. If you don't irrigate because you think that it's too much money, let's be honest, irrigation over an entire season for the standard residential lawn is probably about an extra $100 to $200 on your water bill. Now, if you don't spend that extra $100 to $200 on your water bill, every year you go to the hardware store after your lawn dies from the summer heat and you go buy 3 bags of grass seed and a bag of fertilizer and you dump that on your lawn and then you water the shit out of it for the entire month of September because you're trying to fill in the spots that died over the winter. When, if you spent that $100 that you just spent on grass seed in water over the summertime, then you wouldn't have to spend that $100 on grass seed, and then your lawn would stay healthy all summer long, and it would be less work for you because all you have to do is put out a sprinkler, or if you have an in-ground system, all you have to do is turn it on. So that is my opinion on irrigating and why it is very, very important, as well as dry soil. We've all picked up a hunk of dry soil. It cracks and fractures and falls apart in your hand. And have you ever seen anything grow in the desert? No, the only thing that grows in the desert is cactus. And we don't want cactuses growing in our backyard. So moist soil always performs better organically for plants, for lawns, for anything, because those microbes in your soil are actually working in moisture. They need moisture to live. So when you let your soil dry out, you're actually losing nutrients in your soil as well. And this is a big thing where that comes into gardens and people digging up their lawns and turning them into gardens. You need to keep the moisture in your soil to keep your lawn healthy. So letting your lawn dry out every summer actually detriments your soil and makes it harder to bring back your lawn in the fall. Summer after summer of being dry to the point of the crowns of the plant dying will lead to a thin, patchy lawn full of weeds. The best thing to do is to at least keep some sort of irrigation on your lawn throughout the summer, to then when you get into the fall, your lawn can start going again. And the other thing that with irrigation is, I know a lot of people who are like, I water on Mondays and Fridays. You need to be watering deep and infrequent. The more you water deep, the more you tell your lawn that the water is down here. The water is not at the surface of the soil. The water is deep. And that will lead your lawn to have driving roots pushing down into the ground towards areas of the ground where it believes there is moisture. So if you continue to water deeply week after week after week, your lawn will become more self-sufficient and will not dry out as quickly. So irrigation over time can actually lead to less irrigation over time. When I worked at the golf course, we did not irrigate as heavy as I have ever irrigated or I've ever known anybody to irrigate a residential lawn, and the golf course stayed green for the most part all summer long. So irrigation on a consistent basis and on a proper basis will lead to less problems in the future. So keep that in mind when I talk about irrigation. So those are the two things that I'm talking about this week, irrigation and mowing. Those are the two things that I think most homeowners overlook when it comes to lawn stuff. So without further ado, let's head into the next segment, the final segment, and what I believe is the most important segment of the podcast: successes and failures. Okay, so now that we're here, today is the first inaugural run of this segment, successes and failures. And I'm just going to be, today is actually currently, at the time of recording, is the first day of 2022. So I'm going to be going through, over the entire month of January, successes and failures from 2021. So 2021 for me overall was a good year for the lawn. It was a wet year, and we didn't really get hit with a ton of summer heat. We had quite a wet summer, so I would say about end of May, late May, all the way through to the end of July, we had consistent rainfall. I didn't run my sprinkler system at all for the months of May and June and July, which is very rare. I didn't run my irrigation system at all for the months of June and July. May, on the other hand, and April were both very dry months, so we didn't get a lot of spring rain, which led to a lot of issues in the fall with the adjustment period for a lot of plants, because it was such a dry spring, and it was also a really cold spring. We got snow in one of the last weeks of May, so that's not normal for us here at all. We're normally done with snow at the beginning of May. So that was very abnormal, so that led to a lot of issues in the lawn and issues with plants and stuff, getting frostbite and different things like that, because we were having such late frosts into the year, and also just kind of being off schedule, like stuff blooming almost a month late, which was very weird because it was almost like our spring was bumped into the summer. We had a heat spell in about late August for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, late August, early September, where it was really, really hot, and I was irrigating a lot to help push the lawn through. We were in the 40s, high humidex, all that stuff. And then from about last week of August straight through to October, we had pretty much consistent thunderstorms almost every week, massive thunderstorms and tons of rain. So not really a very struggling year for me, like I know a lot of people in the Midwest were, water-wise and lawn-wise. I didn't really have a lot of opportunistic weeds pushing their way into the lawn because of all the water. However, because of all the water, especially in the spring and the summer, that period that I said, June and July, there was a lot of growth, to the point, like my lawn is quite healthy. I fertilize, and the spring is when I push most of my fertilizer, and there's normally at least one mow in the spring where it's overgrown. I had, I think, a month and a half worth of overgrown mows, clippings everywhere. I look back at some of the pictures from May and June and July, and the lawn just doesn't look good. It's got clippings all over. It's just an absolute disaster. I ended up having to rake out clippings and stuff. It was a mess. And this is my failure, or my biggest failure, I think, for 2021 was losing track of mowing and not keeping up with mowing. As earlier in the podcast, I talked about how important keeping up with your mowing is and how it can affect everything. And like, I had so many problems, just the color, the texture, the way that the grass was standing up. It was lying down. It was doing weird things that I had never seen before. And it was rain drunk. It was so wet, and we weren't getting a lot of sunlight, to the point that the grass was just like lying over. It didn't even care anymore. The clippings were everywhere. There was spots in the lawn that I had to go and move clippings and rake them up and pick them up. It was just a mess. And as soon as it started, as soon as I got behind on the first mow, it was never ending after that, because as soon as you have those clippings in the lawn, every mow after that, you keep collecting the same clippings, and especially if you're adding new clippings on top of that, it doesn't help at all. So that was my biggest failure, I think, of the 2021 lawn season, and that was just life getting in the way. I was very busy with work. I was very busy making videos and I didn't get to the lawn, and I need to leave time for that. So moving into 2022, I'm going to make sure that I don't let that happen again. That was obviously a weather anomaly too. It wasn't 100% my fault, but I should have been more on top of that. So that was, I think, my first failure. My biggest success, I think, of 2021 was my watering game. I talked about the importance of watering in this and how much of a difference it can make coming into fall. This year, as some of you may know, I installed an in-ground irrigation system in my backyard, and I actually bought myself a soil thermometer and a soil probe, and this helped me in general help perfect my water and make my watering more efficient. So I used to be the type of person that just ran whatever sprinkler I got for an hour. I had 2 rain gauges going in my yard throughout the entire year. I was constantly testing to make sure I was getting that perfect inch to inch and a half of water every week. And if not, I was supplementing with watering throughout the season, even in the spring, right? I said we had a really dry spring. I was watering quite a bit in the spring to help get the lawn kick-started and going. I made sure that when I was running the backyard system, everywhere was getting even. When you first install your irrigation system, you have to work out the kinks. So I had to work out a lot of kinks with different problems that I had with dry spots and spots not getting enough, or this zone needed to run longer than that zone because of wherever they were located. And I started for the first time this year watering localized dry spots. So when I worked at the golf course, the greens themselves got watered with heads, but the heads were not efficient enough to keep the greens green. So whenever it was really hot, we got out the hoses and somebody went to the green with the fire hose and we hosed down the dry spots. So they checked with a moisture sensor the moisture in the soil, and then they would hose down the dry spots on the green to keep them green. So I did the same thing on my lawn. Whenever I started to see spots checking out into summer dormancy, I would get out the hose and I would sit there and water the localized dry spots to hopefully bring them back. And that kind of kept me on top of everything. Everything was looking green and good. I have pictures from mid-July, the middle of that heat spell in August, where everything looks really good. At least good compared to what it used to look like. And that was what I got my irrigation to a point where I was happy with it. My front lawn, I perfected the irrigation there. I'm just very happy in general on how the irrigation went this year. I feel like I had a better handle on it. Most years I find as soon as the summer hits, I feel like I'm falling behind. I can't keep up with irrigation and everything starts to kind of hit issues. But this year I felt like I was on top of it. I had much of a better handle on it. And overall, that's what I think my biggest success is for 2021. So without further ado, that is the inaugural episode of the Great Green North podcast. I tried to tie it together with the questions that I was answering and the successes and failures, and I think I'm going to continue to do that in upcoming episodes. So if you liked this episode, what you can do is you can subscribe if you're on a podcasting feed or on YouTube. You can leave a comment down below. You can rate the podcast. And I encourage you guys to share it with your friends and family who you know are interested in this stuff, like this stuff. Help encourage other people to have a great lawn. Because if everybody has a great lawn, then lawn care becomes a lot easier because there's less weeds and less problems. So I'd encourage everybody to watch this episode, leave a comment, subscribe. And without further ado, as I say at the end of every video, from the Great Green North, my name is Whit Murray. And as always, thanks for listening, and keep it green. The Great Green North podcast is written and hosted by Wade Murray. The theme songs are Ixon Go and Ixon Siesta for the intro music and the music between the segments. Please come back next week. This podcast uploads every Sunday, and you can subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next week.